We've all seen the headlines. We've all heard the chatter. But what actually went down inside that London courtroom? Let's break down one of the most explosive celebrity trials in recent memory, Johnny Depp versus The Sun. This was a high-stakes showdown that went way beyond a famous actor. It was about reputation, truth, and a relationship laid bare for the world to see.
And it all kicked off with this single headline from a 2018 article in The Sun. The paper's executive editor did not hold back at all. He used the term wife beater. Just those two words, and boom, that's what lit the fuse on a legal firestorm that nobody would be able to look away from.
So what do you do when a massive newspaper brands you with a label that damaging? Well, you sue. And that's exactly what Depp did. His legal team filed a libel suit basically saying that the article was a flat-out lie that was causing serious harm to his career and reputation.
So this is the heart of the conflict. You've got Depp suing for libel, right? But The Sun, they weren't backing down, not one bit. Instead, they mounted a defense that turned this case from being about a single headline into, really, a forensic examination of a deeply troubled marriage.
Okay, so really quick, what exactly is libel in the UK? It's simple, but it's crucial. Under the law, it's any published statement that's likely to cause serious harm to a person's reputation. And, Depp's lawyers argued that being called a wife beater in a national newspaper, yeah, that definitely clears the bar.
But here's where things get really interesting, and this is the absolute key to this whole case. In UK libel law, if you're the one being sued, you have a powerhouse of a defense available to you. You just have to do one thing: prove that what you published was true. And here it is, right from the law books. It's a defense to show that what you said is substantially true. Now think about that for a second. The whole burden of proof just got flipped on its head. Johnny Depp didn't have to prove he was innocent. The Sun had to prove he was guilty. Now, before the trial could even really get going, the judge had to decide what the headline actually meant, legally speaking. Depp's team argued it implied all this complex stuff you see on the left, but the judge sided with the Sun's simpler take, that the core meaning they had to prove was simply that Depp beat Amber Heard. And that decision, it made the goalposts a lot clearer for the newspaper. So how in the world do you go about proving an allegation like wife beater is substantially true? Well, the Sun's strategy was to get specific, very specific. Their entire defense was built around 14 separate alleged incidents of violence they claimed happened during the relationship. So for weeks, the trial basically became a deep, deep dive into these 14 incidents. Just try to imagine being the judge. For every single allegation, he heard two completely different, contradictory stories. He then had to sift through it all and decide which version was more likely to be true. Let's dig into one of the most explosive examples.
This one was a major turning point. The incident in Australia, March 2015. Depp was out there filming the next Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and what allegedly went down in their rented house became an absolute centerpiece of this entire case. And the evidence that came from that house was intense. The court was shown these images. This is extensive damage, messages scrawled on mirrors. The judge even heard Depp admit that he'd written some of it himself, using blood from his own severed fingertip.
And the stories about what happened could not have been more different. On one side, the Sun's lawyers, using Amber Heard's testimony, claimed Depp put her through a 3-day ordeal of physical assault. But Depp's side, he claimed Heard flew into a rage and threw a vodka bottle at him, which is what severed the tip of his finger. So the judge looked at everything. He even saw a text from Depp to his doctor saying he'd cut his own finger. And his conclusion on this point was a huge blow to Depp's case. He stated it flatly: "I do not accept Depp's version of events." In terms of credibility, that was a massive hit. And it wasn't just about Australia, of course. For all 14 incidents, the judge was weighing this mountain of conflicting evidence. He had photos like this one, showing alleged injuries to Amber Heard. But then he'd have to balance that against testimony from friends, from staff, from doctors, all of them telling different stories. And then you had the documentary evidence, all the texts and emails. And this message from Depp himself was an absolute bombshell for the Sun's defense team. His own reference to his monster side, it played directly into the narrative they were building, and you can be sure the judge took careful note. So, after 16 grueling days of testimony, a mountain of evidence, and the world watching, it was finally time. The entire case came down to one single question. Had the Sun newspaper proven that their story was true? It was time for the final verdict.
the judge released his ruling. And inside that long, detailed document, one number told the entire story: 12. That's right. Out of the 14 specific incidents that the Sun presented as their defense, the judge found that 12 of them had been proven to be true. 12 out of 14. Legally, that was more than enough to meet the standard of substantially true.
And this is the line from the judgment that made it official. The judge stated clearly and unequivocally that the Sun had successfully proven its case, their defense that what they wrote was true, it had worked.
And so the outcome, after all that, was actually very simple. Johnny Depp's libel claim failed. The Sun newspaper won. And when Depp's attempt to appeal the decision was denied, the UK court's ruling became the final word on the matter.
But here's the twist, isn't it? Because this decisive UK verdict, it wasn't the end of the story. A completely separate trial back in the United States heard a lot of the same evidence, but came to a very, very different conclusion. And that leaves us with a huge, fascinating question. How can two courts find two different truths? And what does that tell us about how we shape our own perceptions, both inside the courtroom and out in the real world?